DMDogO here with another review from the DM's Guild. This time we're looking at The Scholar by Benjamin Huffman, on sale for $2.95. This is the one where you learn things, right? The Scholar by Benjamin Huffman. This is a basically like a mundane style like scholar, like a researcher, somebody who uses their knowledge and their intelligence in order to gain for things. And it is an intelligence-based class. That's their primary stat here. So you can expect a lot of like they know things or they get a lot of proficiencies, and that carries through. So let's go through their basic abilities. First, we have academic discourse, which is kind of like the thieves' cant or druidic for academics. Think if you've ever seen like 1980s politics in Britain, kind of like that. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to anyone else who's not in the know, but it makes sense to them. So we'll move on. Next, you have sage advice, which is a slightly modified version of bardic inspiration, which isn't a bad thing, as it is slightly more reactive than preventative. You can decide at die roll time if someone needs it, and while its potential isn't as high, it plays a slightly different role than the bard ability. Analyze enemy allows you to do extra damage on the first hit, and doing so being able to use your intelligence modifier as well for the damage and the attack roll. Kind of similar to the Hexblade's Curse or Hexblade ability that the Warlocks get, but a little different. Next, you have erudite applications, which is kind of like Eldritch Invocation. Some of these are very actually identical to the Warlock ones, though not a bad thing, and the unique ones are the majority here. You've also got reliable talent. This is a rogue ability. Exactly as it is, it's the exact same level, and it does thematically, however, it does thematically fit because it basically sets your minimum die roll on ability checks to 10. Next, you have Quick Study, which is, I really like this feature because it leans into the theme very perfectly. Learning a single tool or skill for the day is really neat. It's interesting. It's something that I would imagine a scholar would be able to do. Next thing is you've got Brilliant Mind, which allows you to re-roll any saving throws you're proficient in, which you're proficient in 3 of those, which are, Intelligence, Wisdom, and then you gain Charisma at a later level. Then you have Expansive Intellect, which allows you to increase your intelligence beyond the normal cap of 20 to 22, and then from 22 to 24 at 20th level. The last ability you get is Flash of Genius, which is kind of like the Rogue Capstone, except it allows you to use this on saving throws as well. So saving throws, attack rolls, ability checks, everything you decide, you go, well, I'm going to roll 20 on this, and that's what I got. It's really powerful. However, there is some caveats to this because this treats the die roll as if it had been a 20, as in a natural 20. Now, I wonder if what the interpretation is supposed to be here. Does that mean that I can automatically critical an attack roll? Does it not? I'm not sure here, so I'm going to leave that one to interpretation. Next, you get the 6 subclasses. The Culinarian. They can cook meals that give boost to the party, things like adding maximum HP, and additionally, what are the following? Resistance or immunity at higher levels, bonuses to ability checks, or hidden attributes based on the monster. This is something up for the DM to decide, and could be kind of interesting. Like, I imagine a Culinarian going around finding rare ingredients. This is kind of an interesting, idea. Next, you got the Diplomat. This one's the talker of the group. Able to completely disable combat with any creatures that speak a language you share, and you know a hell of a lot with this one. You gain extra proficiencies as you take this class. This guy loves to talk and is immune to charm or fear effects at level 20. And in addition, you cannot have disadvantage on any charisma or insight-based checks. This one is built to talk. Next, you have the Physician. This is the healer. The first ability allows him to grant the ability to spend hit die during combat with a slight boost, then out of combat to gain those hit dice during short rests. Their 9th level ability allows them to return the dead to life, albeit at a much reduced cost, but at a higher level. So if you're thinking about things like Revivify, it has a 10-minute window in which you can do it. So you have a reduced cost, but it's a longer window, but it's a higher level. So there's a lot of balancing things going on there. Rejuvenative Techniques, which is a little higher than that, allows you to restore short rest abilities in 5 minutes, which isn't bad, and it does cool down on a long rest. Their 20th level ability is nuts, granting temp health of half a character's maximum HP and granting resistance to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing and poison damage on up to 6 people based on their other abilities from their normal scholar. Next, the Ritualist, a primary ritual caster. Really interesting concept. Choose 3 spells out of two of which must be ritual spells, but can be from any spell list, and off you go. They also gain the ability to lower the cost of making scrolls, cast spells either without spending material or spell slots, and finally able to cast any spell of 4th level or lower. Next, you have the Tactician, kind of like a fighter subclass. They gain proficiencies in martial weapons and medium armor and shields, and then they have the ability to grant bonus damage to allies who benefit from your sage advice, able to direct damage attacks to allies with a bonus attack action, move all your allies within 60 feet of you, either away or towards danger, and grant advantage to your allies on a single creature or a single haste type action to all of your allies. That is, you can attack with a single weapon attack, disengage, dodge, or use an object. Those are like the main ones you can use during a haste. Next, the Theologian. The ability to choose domains to pull spells from and spell casting. So you can choose a domain on a long rest and go, well, I want it to be Tempest today, or I want it to be Light, I want it to be Life, and you can choose based on that. They grant a small amount of temporary hit points every time they cast a cleric spell. That assumes a spell slot, obviously. They can grant disadvantage against the spells when the target is either Fey, Fiend, or Undead. And finally, they grant access to Commune, Dispel Evil and Good, and Raise Dead. Now, the erudite applications, there's quite a lot of them. I don't want to go through all of them, but I want to list my 2 favorites. Libra. Libra is one of my favorites because it's something I think some DMs struggle with, at least in terms of how to handle things like, well, what do I know about X monsters? Like, well, what do you tell them? What's the DC for this? How high is it? How low is it? Libra kind of eliminates that and says, well, this character knows when they use the Analyze Enemy feature, they know how much this is. They know what this is. They know the resistances and weaknesses and potentially their vulnerabilities. They know all of that stuff, and it's easy to give that information out without feeling like you made an arbitrary ruling. The other one is Verbum Dei. You nuke yourself to nuke your enemy. And thematically, uttering a word that mortalies weren't meant to hear is cool. It's just a really interesting ability. I really like it just as thematically. What did I like about this? Well, I liked a lot of things. I really liked the Culinarian one. It felt really interesting, really new, really fresh. I can really see a really cool role play opportunity there. Some really interesting stuff around that. I liked some of the erudite applications, the Verbum Dei and the Libra. They were some of my favorite abilities. I can see them being really useful in a party, and I can see them not being too overpowered or too broken. I like the idea of the Ritualist being like a ritual caster kind of style of thing. That was very interesting, very different, not something I'd seen before. Although the ritual feat kind of takes some wind out of their sails a little bit because it gives you access to a larger spread of ritual spells, because it doesn't you pick a single class and you can just pick all, like a ton of them, and usually you pick Wizard because they have the most. Yeah, I liked a lot of those abilities. I liked the some of the other things, like Sage Advice was really interesting. The way it's different from Bardic Inspiration feels unique enough while still being familiar that I think you'll get a lot of use out of it. Some really interesting ways I like that there are 6 subclasses here, so there's a lot of plethora of choice here. Right, now what didn't I like about the Scholar? So I want to start with one of the subclasses, the Physician, first. And I think this class is overtuned. There are 2 abilities I want to specifically call out because I think they need some adjustment down, or at least some caps put on them so that they are not so powerful. First is Doctor's Orders. Doctor's Orders allows you to spend other characters' hit dice in order to heal them on top of your intelligence modifier and their constitution modifier. That a bonus action with no cap to it. That means that you can essentially bypass any rolling of hit dice during short rests or during any other time. If you don't need a short rest to restore abilities, why would you ever take one? You wouldn't need to. You could just carry on, have the Physician heal you nearly, but while moving. It's quite powerful. it needs other some kind of cap in order to prevent that situation from occurring. Either like the healer feat, where it's once per character per short rest and or long rest, or something else to kind of like mitigate that ability, as it were. The other one I want to talk about, the ability from the physician, is preventative medicine. For a capstone, it's very strong. Granting half the character's maximum HP as temporary hit points is a lot to start with at that level. The other thing is also you're granting resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, poison, and slashing damage. That's also a lot. That's basically a barbarian +1 in terms of their resistances. Yes, it's non-magical, and the barbarian ones doesn't specify non-magical or magical. It still works regardless of which one it sits on, but it's still very, very strong. It feels very strong for a capstone. If they didn't already have a capstone from their Scholar main, which is the Rogue's capstone, it would be very powerful in and of itself. Next, I wanted to move on to kind of like the general concept of the classes. Now, the Culinarian I really liked. It felt like something that was really interesting, unique, and different. The Diplomat, it feels like, depending on the campaign you're in, you're going to see either a lot of use in this, and their powers are going to be very, very strong in terms of being able to just stop combat flat out from anyone ever occurring, or they're going to be relegated to doing a whole lot of not, because if they run into things they don't share a language for, or if they run into things that, for instance, that are just beasts and monsters and creatures of that kind. So this one's one of those ones where it's either, feast or famine kind of thing. And when the feast is good, it's real good. But it's kind of like hard to say which way it's going to kind of sit. I want to move on to some of the other ones. Tactician. So Warlord's Rush might need to be single ally. It's hard to say with this one. It's very difficult to work on balance. Balance for class is very, very hard in general. Like, it's something that I think even Wizards of the Coast struggle with. Balancing classes is one of those things where they're like, well, we get close and we'll see what happens kind of thing. Direct the Strike, I would have preferred it if it said you need to specify an ally as the first target. So basically you say this ally can strike that enemy, but I can see reasons why you might want to direct a strike for another creature. So it's kind of like, I can see some interesting applications there. But time for my final thoughts and my rating. So overall, I kind of like this one. I like the attempt it's trying to make. An intelligence-based researcher trying to take the mundane world and make it their own. To take what is there and actually massage it into something that's useful. Now, I do have issues, though, with it. The Physician is definitely overtuned. It's two abilities that I mentioned when I was talking about things I didn't like. They're definitely overtuned. They are very, very powerful for a healer. They are very powerful, full stop. And you take into conjunction, they're already very powerful. They already have a capstone from the Rogue. That's very strong. The other one is the Diplomat, and I think the Diplomat is kind of a feast or famine subclass. It will either do incredibly well in your campaign because you have a lot of creatures that can talk. If you're very like human centric, or you're very like elf or any sentient race that has a language, the Diplomat will do exceptionally well, probably better than a bard. And that's saying something. If a bard is competing with another class for the party face, something weird's going on. The other class, though, that I want to mention, though, this is the subclass, is the Culinarian, for the opposite reason. The Culinarian is kind of a mention of what I thought the Scholar was going to be able to do, what I thought it was going to go for. That's the perfect example of what I thought this was going for, and I really liked that subclass. It really felt like this fits thematically, this is interesting, this is unique, this is different, this isn't something I've seen before, and I really, really liked it. So I would like to see more of that. The other thing is that in the Scholar base class, there are two abilities that are basically lifted from the Rogue's type and put into this. Now, the Erudite applications are lifted from the Warlock slightly, but there's enough differences there that I can kind of forgive that. But the two ones from the Rogue are basically one of them is a carbon copy, exact same name. The other one is a slightly better version of the Rogue's ability because it applies to things like attack rolls and ability checks and saving throws. Now, the Rogue's one is worded slightly differently, and I worry that the one for the Scholar actually implies that it's a critical hit rather than a guaranteed hit, because the Rogue one is worded differently, so it doesn't mean a critical hit. So, overall, I'm going to give it a score of 3 out of 5. I think it needs some more balance tweaks. I think it needs some more play testing. Some people who looking at it and kind of going with like that kind of eye. I have like that halfway to understand when things are a little imbalanced and broke and kind of like, but I can't tell you exactly when you'll hit the point of here is where balance is. Here is where these things feel right, as it were. But yeah, those are just my thoughts. You're free to ignore them, and thank you, and please do remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and if you can, please use my affiliate code, which is just down below, to purchase anything from the DMs Guild. Thank you, peace out.